It was supposed to be a day to remember, the kind you store in your heart for the rest of your life. Jordan Miller, a 16-year-old black teenager, walked into the pilot lounge with stars in his eyes and a visitor badge proudly displayed on his chest. He wasn't there by accident. He was selected for a special FAA vocational program, something he'd worked hard to earn. But that didn't matter to Captain Rebecca Thompson. The moment she saw him, her expression hardened. Her assumptions kicked in before she even read the badge. No questions. No chance for Jordan to explain. Just a cold, commanding voice, "You don't belong here." That was her verdict. And just like that, Jordan went from dreamer to suspect. Just because of how he looked. She completely ignored the badge and the explanation. Her authority, her bias, and her quick judgment combined into one sharp blow, a textbook case of racial prejudice and discrimination. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was the system in action. A system that treats black youth with suspicion before curiosity. Judgment before listening. And the worst part? Nobody spoke up. Nobody stopped her. What happened next was worse than silence. It was escalation. Even after Jordan calmly explained that he was part of a fully authorized FAA initiative, Rebecca Thompson accused him of carrying a fake badge. She called airport security and treated him like a potential threat to national safety. A child. With a visitor pass. Being treated like a trespasser. The look in her eyes wasn't one of concern, it was fear. Fear rooted in racial prejudice, cloaked in the language of procedure. It didn't matter that Jordan had done everything right. He was a black teenager in a space where few who look like him are seen. And that alone made him guilty in her eyes. You could hear the silence of the bystanders louder than any siren. Everyone stood around, letting this happen, as if paralyzed by uniform and rank. Jordan was completely alone, facing abusive authority backed by silence. There are moments when the world shrinks around you. That was one of them. Jordan sat, hands in his lap, surrounded by adults who viewed him as a threat. The shame stung. His heart pounded. His throat tightened. He had done nothing wrong, and yet there he was, treated like a criminal. No one spoke in his defense. No one acknowledged his story. Not even a whisper of support. Isolation doesn't always mean physical distance. Sometimes, it's a room full of people who look through you. His despair wasn't loud, it was swallowed. He knew that if he raised his voice or defended himself too strongly, he could be labeled aggressive. That's how the system works. He had to choose between protecting himself emotionally or appearing calm enough to survive. That's a choice no 16-year-old should have to make. But what they didn't see, what Rebecca refused to see, was the journey that brought Jordan there. His dream of becoming a pilot didn't come out of nowhere. He'd been obsessed with aviation since he was a kid. Watching planes. Studying flight paths. Reading articles most adults couldn't understand. And his biggest supporter. His father, Richard Miller, a respected FAA official with decades in the field. They spent weekends at the airport together. Talked about aircraft systems. Played flight simulators. Jordan didn't just dream, he prepared. When the FAA announced the program, Jordan applied with a heart full of hope and a 1,000-word essay that blew the evaluators away. His story was one of resilience, curiosity, and hard-earned ambition. This wasn't charity. It wasn't luck. It was earned. Every word of that essay was real. Every minute spent learning was intentional. But prejudice doesn't care about effort. As the weight of injustice pressed on his chest, Jordan closed his eyes, not to escape, but to anchor himself. He remembered his childhood memories with his dad, his first time on a plane, how he stared out the window in awe, and how his dad whispered, "One day, you'll be up there." Those memories became his oxygen, his shield, his strength. In a moment when the world was telling him he didn't belong, his memories reminded him that he did. They reminded him of long nights watching flight documentaries, of how proud his father looked when he submitted his FAA application. Sometimes, memory isn't nostalgia. It's strategy. And Jordan was using his wisely. Not to fight, but to stay standing. Then came the footsteps that changed the course of the day. Richard Miller arrived. A high-ranking FAA official, well-known and deeply respected, he didn't enter with rage. He walked in with presence. With power. And with the truth. He saw his son surrounded by security and knew immediately what had happened. Calmly, he laid out the paperwork, emails, approvals, documentation. "This badge was authorized by my department," he said, without raising his voice. Suddenly, the room's energy shifted. The abusive authority that once seemed absolute now looked insecure. Rebecca didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke volumes. A 20-year career. Countless hours in the sky. Leadership training. All of it crumbled in seconds. Rebecca Thompson, once a respected captain, now stood exposed. Not for a technical error, but for a moral failure. For treating a boy with bias rather than professionalism. And everyone in that room saw it. The reputation she'd built over 2 decades now cracked under the weight of her discrimination. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. She failed. Not because she lacked experience, but because she lacked humanity. A member of airport security, clearly uncomfortable, stepped forward. He looked at Jordan, removed his cap, and muttered, "I'm sorry, kid. We were wrong." Simple. But powerful. Richard, standing next to his son, didn't let the moment slip. He addressed the room, "This isn't just about my son. It's about every young black person who is treated like a threat for simply showing up." And that was the truth no one could unhear. Dignity isn't a favor. It's a right. It's one thing for a rookie to make a mistake. But someone with 20 years of service? That's not ignorance, that's a choice. Rebecca had experience, training, and context. But none of that stopped her from seeing Jordan as a threat instead of a student. That contradiction stings. It shows that racism isn't about lack of training. It's about lack of reflection. About unchecked power. And no uniform, no matter how decorated, gives anyone the right to crush someone's spirit. The most painful irony? That the same boy accused of being an intruder had written one of the most moving entries in the FAA's program history. Over 1,000 words, not just about flying, but about breaking barriers. About growing up without black role models in aviation. About believing he could be one. He poured his heart into that essay. Not to impress, but to belong. And he earned it. Not through pity. Through perseverance. But racial prejudice doesn't read essays. It just judges faces. Let's not forget this, Jordan is 16. Just 16. An age when many kids are still figuring out who they are. An age when one moment of humiliation can echo for years. And yet, he handled that moment better than most adults would. He didn't scream. He didn't lash out. He stood his ground. Quietly. Bravely. Abusive authority doesn't care about age. But it should. Because when you criminalize children, you don't just damage their day, you damage their future. And yet, through it all, Jordan stayed strong. Not because he had to, but because no one else would be strong for him. Now let me ask you this, how many Jordans are out there right now? How many black teenagers with dreams as big as the sky are being judged before they even speak? How many have their ambition mistaken for arrogance, their presence mistaken for threat? This story isn't just about an airport or a badge. It's about you. It's about me. It's about all of us, and the kind of world we're choosing to allow. Because every time someone stays silent in the face of discrimination, that silence becomes part of the problem. So, what will you do the next time you see injustice? Will you look away? Or will you step in like Richard did, calm, clear, and unshakable? Let this story be your wake-up call. Because change doesn't come from waiting, it comes from acting. Sparkles, and if this message hit you, if it made you think, made you feel, or opened your eyes, then don't just scroll past. Comment below. Share your thoughts. Tell us, have you ever faced or witnessed anything like this? Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and join a community that believes in dignity, awareness, and real talk. There's more coming, stories that matter, truths that need to be heard, and tools to help you make a difference. We're not here just to watch stories. We're here to change them.